is Cross My Heart Ministry. Thank you so much for stopping by. Well, it's Monday, and that means it's time for this week's edition of Martha Monday. If you're a regular subscriber, you know that on Mondays we get in the kitchen or somewhere around the house, and I'll share an organizational tip or a cooking idea, something like that. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But before we do, I wanted to remind you that May is here, and that means it's time for our Psalms of Faith study. We did this last year. We called it Psalms from the Heart. This month we're doing another 3-week session in Psalms. We'll be studying 3 Psalms in depth, and it's not too late for you to download your copy of the free study guide. We want to thank our friends over at Joy of Living for making this available to all of us totally free. Follow the link below in the information section and download your copy. If you've been on the fence, it's time to commit. This coming Friday on the channel, you can look for our introductory teaching lecture where we'll introduce the Psalms, sort of do a quick overview, and then look briefly at the 3 that we will be studying in depth. And then the very next day, you open your study guide and launch into that in-depth day-by-day study of Psalm chapter 1. And Lord willing, a week from Friday, we'll have the teaching lecture for Psalm 1 updated and posted on the channel. So if you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and do that. Click the big red subscribe button so it will be easy for you to come back and find our channel when you're looking for that teaching lecture. Well, right now it's Monday, so let's get in here and look at what I've got going for us today in the kitchen. I'm cleaning out the fridge, cleaning out the pantry, and you know how sometimes you have some vegetables or onions, potatoes, I've got some green peppers, bell peppers, different colors, and so there are things that sometimes we accumulate in the kitchen and we just can't use them up quickly enough, and I'm certainly finding that to be the case during this sort of empty nesting phase that Kevin and I find ourselves in. I buy the things that I used to buy, but we just don't use them up quickly enough. And so if you watch the channel, you also know how very much I love my freezer. So rather than throw anything away, if you can freeze it, this girl does it. I think I got that from my mama. Carol Lee freezes all sorts of stuff, way more stuff than I do. So before these things go to waste, these vegetables, I'm going to chop them up and put them in the freezer, and I want to share some ideas for how I make that happen. I'm calling this edition of Martha Monday Freeze In the Freshness. So come on in and let's get started. Okay, well, I've assembled all of my items here. I first went ahead and peeled up all these potatoes that I had. I don't always buy potatoes. A friend gave me some potatoes, and I like a baked potato now and then, but I also like to have some diced potatoes to make hash browns, or if you make a vegetable soup, they're nice to have. But when I freeze things like potatoes or onions or the bell pepper, I don't want to freeze them and just throw them all in the bag. I'm going to put them eventually in the freezer bag, but if you just throw them all in here, they're going to be in a big clump, and you just sort of have to use it all at once or bang it on the counter to kind of break off what you need. So what I do instead is freeze the things after I dice them in a long pan and spread them out as much as possible. I've got a couple of metal pans, and I'm going to spread things out. I'm going to freeze them, and then after an hour or 2, when I think they're good and firm, I'm going to go ahead and break them up and put them in the freezer bag, mark them with a Sharpie and date them, and then put them back in the freezer quickly. And so what that means is they're almost like little marbles in there, and it's easy to open the bag, scoop out what I need, and put it back without having that big clump to deal with. So if you have a nice machine like I do, I love this KitchenAid mixer. It was a Christmas gift from my husband a few years ago, and with the food processor attachment, it is just a snap to go ahead and get things diced up. I'm going to demonstrate this to you. I've got it all hooked up, but when I turn this on, look at that, just down they go, and it just is so very quick to make that happen. I love having this as a handy tool, but if you don't have the food processor that I do, you can just dice it up whatever method you use. You may have another little device. My mom has one of those with the little crisscross cut thing that you raise it and lower it and just do it down like that, and it has an arm that releases and you smash it down, and she loves that. So whatever method you use, chop it up, spread it out, freeze it, put it in the freezer bags, and you are good to go. So rather than have you watch me process all my vegetables, I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to go ahead and finish processing my potatoes. Then I'm going to do my onions. I'm going to do my bell pepper. I'm going to let you see them all spread out, and then I'm going to pop it in the freezer, and I'll show you kind of what it looks like at the end. So thanks so much, and stay tuned. I'll be right back. Okay friends, I'm back. I got the potatoes all spread out evenly. They are in the freezer, trying to get frozen as quickly as possible so I can put them in my little Ziploc bag that I've noted as potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and date that as well so I know how long it's been in there when I go looking for them. I also thought it might be good to kind of share with you what I do with these things after they're in the freezer. So when I buy potatoes, which really isn't that often, it's usually because I'm having family and I'm making mashed potatoes that I don't make every day. Sometimes I'll have a little baked potato if I get a hankering for that. But if I've got a bunch of them left, I go ahead and dice them up, and then they're available if I want to throw them in a vegetable soup or if I want to make hash brown potato casserole. I'll share that recipe sometime soon coming up. It's probably the dish that shows up at every potluck dinner. Absolutely delicious. A recipe of my mom's. Nothing yummier than hash brown potatoes. They're also good just to do hash browns on top of the stove. If you're having big family dinner, you want to serve some hash browns with the scrambled eggs or the omelets, it's a great way to use those up as well. There are some egg casserole recipes that call for potatoes, so you may use them in that. So potatoes I don't use real often, so that's why when I buy them, I like to freeze the rest. I usually go through my onions and my peppers pretty quickly, but this time, not so much. They are still here, and I want to freeze in that freshness before they start to go bad. I'm going to go ahead and get the onions directly into the pan that I'm going to put them in to freeze rather than putting them in the measuring container and then dumping them out. I just decided to save a step and just let everything fall right down in here. I don't have as many onions as I thought. There was just one, so it's not going to take up a lot of space. So I'm going to go ahead and get the onions spread out, get it frozen, and then I'm going to do the same thing with all of my peppers. They'll be diced up as well. So when I spread these out again thin, like I did the potatoes, get them frozen, then I can dump them into their own Ziploc bag labeled with their name and the date. It's easy to open up that bag and scoop them out. Now I use peppers and onions in all sorts of things. I sometimes just saute them on the stove a little bit and scramble them with some eggs. If the family's here and I'm making omelets, they're great for that. When I'm trying to eat clean and healthy, I may sort of do a dish on top of the stove when it's just me, where I'll dice up some peppers and some onions and sort of saute in a little olive oil and some seasoning. I'll do some chicken in there, and I'll also throw some fresh tomatoes in with the fresh vegetables, maybe some spinach, and then I do that all together kind of in a bowl on top of some cauliflower rice, and that is absolutely delicious. It's amazing what a yummy little meal that is. Now, if my husband is eating dinner with me, I usually need to make some real rice for him. He's not much for just eating completely vegetables with his protein, but it works out well for me, so you might give that a try as well. But if the onion and the peppers are already diced up and they're in the freezer and I don't have anything fresh, it's just easy to open that up, throw it in. I use it when I'm making a quiche. A lot of things that seem to go with eggs and these fresh veggies. I don't put them on a fresh salad, of course. I like to have that be fresh, but rather than letting these just stay in the refrigerator until they wither and get completely shrunk and no longer useful and eventually just be thrown out, when I start to see that I'm not going to be able to use it all up, I like to go ahead and freeze in the freshness, and this is the way I do it. Spread it all out, get them frozen, put them in a Ziploc bag so they'll stay nice and fresh for you, but they're not clumped up. So leave me a note below, ladies. Let me know how you like to use up your leftover potatoes or leftover onions or bell peppers. If you had your stash in the freezer like me, when you open it up and grab out a spoonful or two or a cupful, what do you throw those nice fresh veggies in? To save time, but to have the freshness already in there. So I hope this gives you a tip for how you can clean out your fridge, not waste your veggies, save some time, and have them readily accessible next time you need it. So freeze in the freshness at your house, and thanks for spending this time with me. I'm Laurie McFarland, and this is Cross My Heart Ministry. I hope at your house you are thinking about freezing in the freshness this week.